stood in front of me, and I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't the kind of night where anything felt off. That's what makes it worse. It was the kind of quiet, peaceful evening you think back on fondly, until something slices right through the normal. Welcome to Dark Reddit, your late-night escape into eerie calm. I'm Alex, your voice in the dark and your guide through the unknown. This is Podcast 16, a shadowy chapter in our ever-growing collection of sleepless nights. Tonight's journey spans 1 hour and 3 minutes. A series of chilling tales, whispered into your ears, softly, slowly, designed to help your mind drift, while the darkness unfolds around you. Before we begin, find a quiet, comfortable place to rest. Dim the lights, silence your world, and take one slow, steady breath. Now, close your eyes. Every story in tonight's episode is new, uncharted, untold, and unearthed from the darker corners of Reddit. Tales of strangers, shadows, and things that don't always stay in the past. Let your body grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift. You don't need to watch. You only need to listen. You're safe here. Now, let the night begin. Some stories aren't just told. They settle into your bones. This story is about a neighbor who says she saw death. Not in a metaphorical, near-death experience kind of way. She swears she saw the real thing, the actual angel of death, standing outside her window one quiet evening. And she believes she wasn't even the one it came for. When we first moved into this neighborhood, I didn't expect to hear ghost stories by the second week. But my neighbor, an older woman with sharp eyes and a voice full of drama, quickly made it known that she had many stories to share. She was the kind of person who could turn a trip to the grocery store into a haunting tale of strange coincidences. So when she leaned in one day and said, "I've seen death," I figured this was just another dramatic way of saying she'd had a bad scare, maybe a car accident or an illness. But I was wrong. She didn't mean it figuratively. She meant it literally. "It happened in the evening," she began, her tone quieter than usual. "Around 5. The house was quiet. My husband was still at work. The kids weren't home. I was in the kitchen just washing dishes. Nothing out of the ordinary." She told me she had a window in her kitchen that faced the street. Not unusual, except that directly across the street was a house that looked nearly identical to hers. Same layout, same window in the same spot. She was rinsing off a cup when she glanced up and saw something staring back at her. "I still don't know what it was," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "All I could see was its face. It was enormous, filled the window. It wasn't human. Not quite. I couldn't even describe it properly. It was wrong, distorted, like something pretending to be human but not getting it right." I asked her if she could move, yell, run, scream, but she shook her head. I completely froze. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe for a second. It wasn't just scary. It felt like my soul recognized it. Like I knew, deep down, that I shouldn't be seeing this. That I wasn't meant to see this. She says the thing stared at her for maybe 10 seconds. No movement, no expression, just a heavy, horrible silence. Then it vanished, completely, as if it had never been there at all. She stood there gripping the edge of the sink, heart racing, trying to understand what had just happened. Part of her wanted to chalk it up to stress or imagination, but then the screaming started. From the house across the street, I heard crying, shouting. It sounded like pure panic, she said. And then the ambulance came. Within minutes, the whole street knew. The woman who lived there, just across from me, had died. She was around my age. She lived there, just right in front of my house. It shook her deeply. The timing, the eeriness of the moment, it felt too connected to be coincidence. But it wasn't until a few days later, when she spoke to one of the other neighbors, that she began to form her theory. She asked if I had ever noticed how similar our two houses were, she told me, and how strange it was that two women of almost the same age, living across from each other, and one died the exact moment. That's when the thought hit her like ice water down her spine. What if the thing she saw had come for the wrong person? What if, in a moment of cosmic confusion, two identical homes, two similar women, two matching windows, it had looked into her house by mistake? That's why it stared at me, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It was trying to decide. It realized I wasn't the one. It vanished, and minutes later, the right woman, the intended one, was gone. She's not the same after that. Not in any loud or obvious way, but in the quiet ones. She doesn't like to be alone in the house anymore, especially at dusk. She keeps the kitchen blinds closed now, no matter how sunny it is, and she crosses herself whenever she talks about that day, even though she's never been particularly religious. When I asked if she ever thought she imagined it, she gave me a long, unblinking look and said, "You don't forget a face like that, not even in your dreams." I don't know what she saw. I'm not here to prove or disprove anything, but I do know that something happened to her, something that left a mark. And maybe she's right. Maybe in that strange moment between life and death, between 5 and 501, the veil thinned just enough for her to be noticed by something that normally doesn't make mistakes. Maybe she was stared at by something that doesn't blink. It didn't start with a scream or a shadow. It started with a sound. This story is about strange sounds in the middle of the night, clear as day, sharp as a warning, and one unforgettable moment that still makes the hair on my arms stand up. I was in college, living in a small apartment complex just off campus. The building was old and not particularly charming. Squeaky pipes, thin walls, carpet that never looked clean no matter how much you vacuumed. But it was cheap and close to the bars, and it fit the budget of a 20-something student just trying to get through finals and late-night takeout. That place always had a certain unease to it. Not scary exactly, just off. The kind of feeling that made you double-check the locks without knowing why. But the weirdness didn't really start until I began hearing glass breaking. It was always around the same time, 2 a.m., like clockwork. I'd be lying in bed or nodding off on the couch after a long night of studying or drinking, let's be honest, and then crash. The unmistakable sound of shattering glass, loud and clear, like someone had dropped a bottle on tile or smashed a window with a rock. I'd always get up and check the apartment. Every single time. Nothing. No broken glasses, no knocked over picture frames, no beer bottles that had rolled off the table. And even stranger, it never sounded like it came from inside the apartment. It was always near, like just outside the window, or maybe in the unit above mine, or in the hallway, but never traceable. At first, I thought maybe it was just someone else breaking stuff. A drunk neighbor, someone having a late-night meltdown. That wouldn't have been too surprising in that building. But after weeks of this, I started asking around. Nobody else heard it. Not a peep. Then my younger brother started coming over more often. He was a few years younger than me and liked tagging along to parties. A couple of times, after a night out, he crashed on the futon in the living room. Twice he came barreling into my room in the middle of the night, swearing someone was breaking in. Convinced he'd heard the same sound of glass shattering. But again, nothing. It became sort of a running joke, ghost glass. I'd text him at 2 a.m., "Guess what just broke again?" And he'd reply, "Let me guess, nothing." Still, jokes aside, it was unnerving. The sound was too real to ignore. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't creaky floorboard spooky. It was loud, specific, and unmistakable. But the night that really stayed with me, the one that still feels like a bruise in my memory, happened when my girlfriend stayed over. She was one of those sleepers who thrashed around in bed, arms flailing, legs kicking, tossing and turning like she was fighting ghosts in her dreams. That night, she nudged me pretty hard in her sleep, hard enough to jolt me awake. I groaned, half asleep, rolled over, and that's when I saw her. She was sitting at the foot of the bed, back straight, legs hanging over the edge, facing away from me. I blinked, still groggy, not fully registering what I was seeing. "Hey," I mumbled. "You okay?" She didn't answer. She stood up, still facing away, and then she walked out of the room. At that exact moment, crash. The glass again, louder this time, like it was right outside the bedroom door. And that's when I realized something that turned my stomach to ice. She was still lying next to me. My heart practically stopped. I turned slowly, like I didn't want to believe it. But there she was, sleeping beside me, curled up under the blanket, breathing steadily. Her hand still resting against my arm. Whatever I had just seen, it wasn't her. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I didn't say anything the next morning. I couldn't figure out how to say it. "Hey, I saw a version of you get up and leave the room while the real you was still asleep. Want to get breakfast?" Just didn't quite land. It was the only time I ever saw anything in that apartment. But the glass breaking, that continued until the day I moved out. I never found any actual shards, never saw a broken window or anything out of place. But every so often, when the clock hit 2 a.m., something would crash. And I wonder now, looking back, if maybe it wasn't random. Maybe it was trying to get my attention. Maybe the figure I saw wasn't just a trick of sleep or a dream bleeding into reality. Maybe it was tied to that sound all along, a warning or a glitch or something just passing through. I still don't know what that was. I've told the story a few times, mostly as a weird college ghost story, you had to be there kind of tale. But sometimes, when I hear a sharp clatter in the distance, something shattering just beyond sight, I freeze for a second and remember that night. The not girlfriend sitting at the end of the bed. The glass that never existed. The kind of memory that doesn't just sit in your mind, it waits. Some moments don't fade with time. They just wait. This story is about an old house, a little girl, and something I can't quite explain. Something I'm still not sure I want to. I was about 19 at the time, home from college for the summer, picking up side gigs to keep my bank account alive and my boredom in check. My sister had just moved into this gorgeous but creaky old rental, one of those two-story homes built in the 1930s, with wood floors that groaned under every step and doors that stuck when the weather got humid. It had charm, sure, but it also had a weird kind of weight to it, like it was always holding its breath. She needed someone to watch her daughter, my 2-year-old niece, overnight while she worked a late shift. No problem. I love that little kid to pieces. She's the kind of child who could charm the birds out of the trees with a giggle. Energetic, cuddly, and obsessed with her stuffed elephant, Mr. Waffles. That night started out perfectly normal. We had mac and cheese, watched some cartoons, and played hide and seek until her toddler legs couldn't take it anymore. By 9 p.m., she was out cold, tucked into her little bed with Mr. Waffles under one arm and a lullaby playing softly on repeat. The baby monitor sat next to me on the coffee table, glowing blue and quiet. Around 11 p.m., I was on the couch, half watching some mindless reality TV, half scrolling through my phone, when I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. The hallway that led from the bedrooms to the living room was mostly dark. The only light was the soft flicker from the TV behind me. But there she was. I saw my niece, or who I thought was my niece, come running barefoot down the hallway. She was wearing the same little pink pajamas with the yellow ducks that I tucked her into earlier. She skidded to a stop right before the entryway to the living room and just stood there, half hidden by the shadows. I laughed. "You better get back to bed," I said in a teasing voice, "or I'm gonna get you." She didn't respond, just stood there, watching, still smiling. I got up from the couch and walked toward her, flipping on the hallway light as I went. The hallway was empty, gone, like she'd never been there. Okay, weird. But maybe she ran back to her room when I got up? Kids do stuff like that. So I walked down to her room, still smiling to myself, expecting to find her giggling under the covers. But when I turned the knob and opened the door, I found her exactly where I left her, passed out in the middle of her bed, arms sprawled, mouth open, drooling onto Mr. Waffles. Not just asleep, gone, dead to the world. There was no way she just sprinted down a hallway and beat me back without me hearing her. The old house made noise with every movement. I would have heard the door open, her little feet pattering across the floor. Anything, but nothing. I stood there for a moment, staring at her peaceful little face, trying to talk myself out of the chill crawling up my spine. Maybe I was tired. Maybe my brain had filled in a shadow weirdly. Maybe, but it wasn't just something I saw. I felt her there. Or rather, I felt someone. I scooped her up, still half asleep and murmuring nonsense into my shoulder, and took her back with me to the living room. I couldn't bring myself to go back into that hallway alone that night. I laid her on the couch next to me, turned off the TV, and just sat there in the dark for a long time, listening, waiting. Nothing else happened that night, but I didn't sleep, not a wink. I never told my sister. I didn't want to freak her out, especially with her living there. She already said the place gave her weird vibes sometimes. Lights flickering, things moved slightly out of place, her phone charging oddly slow in certain outlets. Stuff you can write off, but only if it happens once. Or twice. What I saw, or what I thought I saw, wasn't a trick of the light. It wasn't just a shadow. I know my niece. I know her height, her shape, the bounce in her step. I saw her, except I didn't. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. I've run it through every filter: stress, exhaustion, imagination. But there's no version of that moment that doesn't leave me shaken. And the part that unnerves me most? The look on the face of the girl in the hallway. Even in the dark, I could tell. She wasn't playing. She wasn't giggling or teasing or trying to scare me. She just stood there, still, quiet, watching, like she was waiting for something or someone. I've since read about doppelgangers, about spirits mimicking the living, about residual energy, or even entities trying to lure people using familiar faces. I don't know what to believe, but I know what I saw, and it wasn't my niece. Not all encounters leave footprints. Some linger in stranger ways. This story is about a handshake that never happened, or at least one that was never caught on camera. And somehow that makes it even more real to me. I've never been someone particularly drawn to ghost stories or the supernatural. I was a see it to believe it kind of person, which makes what I'm about to tell you all the more strange and hard to shake off. It happened about 8 years ago in Winnipeg, Manitoba, while my family and I were staying at a historic hotel downtown. I won't name it, but if you've ever been, you'd probably know which one I'm talking about. The place was beautiful, timeless. Really, grand chandeliers, thick red carpets that muffled your steps, polished wood paneling, and long hallways that stretched out like something from a different century. We were there for a family event, and I had a little downtime one afternoon while everyone was getting ready. I decided to explore a bit. I've always been the type to wander, the just one more hallway kind of person. So I took a left where I probably shouldn't have, found a staircase tucked behind a heavy wooden door, and climbed up to what I thought was just another guest floor. But the moment I stepped out, the air felt different. Not cold necessarily, just still, like the kind of silence that hums. The carpet here was slightly more faded, the wallpaper older and yellowing just a little more than the rest of the hotel. But I didn't think too much of it. I was lost, not creeped out. Yet, I walked for a bit before realizing I had no idea where I was. So I figured I'd ask someone. Just my luck, a man was coming out of one of the side rooms. Well-dressed, clean-cut, maybe in his 40s. He didn't have a name tag or anything obvious, but something about him screamed, staff, not housekeeping, not a front desk clerk, just someone who belonged there. I asked if he could point me back toward the main lobby. He gave a small smile, polite and a little formal, and gestured down the hallway. Take a left at the end, then the elevator will be to your right, he said. His voice was clear and calm, and I thanked him. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I felt awkward or overly polite, but I reached out to shake his hand. He hesitated for a second, but then extended his hand and gave a firm shake. Normal, real, solid. Have a good afternoon, he said, and turned to walk the other way. I followed his directions, and sure enough, I was back in the lobby in just a few minutes. As I passed the front desk, the clerk behind it stared at me with this look. Not just surprise, but genuine discomfort. Beside her was a security guard who was now looking at me the same way. I slowed down, confused. The guard stepped forward and asked, "Who were you talking to just now?" I blinked. Someone who works here, I thought, on one of the upper floors. I just got turned around and asked for directions. The two of them looked at each other, and then back at me, "Which floor?" the clerk asked quietly. "I don't remember exactly. Maybe the 7th or 8th, I said. "The one with the old wallpaper and the narrow hallway?" Now the guard looked serious. He asked me to come with him for a second. I followed, still completely unaware that anything strange had happened. We went behind the desk into a small room where they had the security monitors. He rewound the feed from the last 10 minutes, flipping between camera angles. And then he found it, a clear shot of me standing in the hallway, alone. Only I wasn't alone. I knew I wasn't. I watched in real time as my past self extended a hand to no one and appeared to shake thin air. I stood there, laughing and nodding like I was talking to someone. Only the footage showed absolutely no one else in the hallway. I must have watched that clip 20 times, from multiple angles. No obstruction, no blind spot. It wasn't like someone had ducked out of frame. I was barely 5 feet 6 inches, and the hallway was open and wide. There was nothing for anyone to hide behind. I saw myself shake someone's hand, and yet, no one was there. The security guard was clearly spooked. He told me, in a low voice, that strange things had happened on that floor before. Electronics glitching, cold spots, even a few reports from staff about seeing someone who disappears down the hallway. But this was the first time they'd caught something, or rather not caught something, on camera. I left the room feeling lightheaded, my mind racing. I had felt that handshake. It wasn't cold or ghostly or otherworldly. It was as normal as any handshake I've ever had. But apparently it had happened with no one. I met my family a few minutes later and didn't say a word. What would I even say? Hey, I just shook hands with someone who doesn't exist. To this day, when I tell the story, people think I'm messing with them, or that I was sleep deprived, or that it was some trick of the light. But I remember every second. The man's face, the weight of his hand, the way he looked directly into my eyes. And I'll never forget the look the security guard gave me when he said, "You were never alone up there." He stood in front of me, and I forgot how to breathe. It wasn't the kind of night where anything felt off. That's what makes it worse. It was the kind of quiet, peaceful evening you think back on fondly, until something slices right through the normal. I just finished brushing my teeth and got into my pajamas, planning to write in my journal like I did most nights. It was the one thing that helped me decompress after a long day. I had this tiny desk lamp, warm and soft, that gave just enough glow to see the pages, but left the rest of my room cloaked in shadows. The kind of setup you'd call cozy, until you realize how vulnerable it makes you. The house was silent. My parents had gone to bed a while ago, and I could hear my dad's soft snoring down the hall. The kind of reassuring background noise you don't notice until you really need it. The rest of the lights were off. I liked the solitude, or at least I thought I did. I had just started writing. Nothing deep, a line about my day, something someone said that stuck in my head. The tip of my pen was still on the page when something shifted. There was no sound, no creaking floorboard, no breeze, just presence. Out of nowhere, I had this deep, primal sense that I wasn't alone, that someone was right there. And then I saw it, right in front of me. Just outside the glow of the desk lamp stood a figure, tall, unmoving, blacker than the shadows behind it. There were no features I could make out, just the outline unmistakably human and terrifyingly wrong. The thing is, it didn't move. It didn't lunge or whisper or even blink. It just stood there, like it had always been there, like I had just failed to notice. Couldn't breathe. Literally, I could not breathe. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and turned off the air. My body froze completely. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't even thinking. I was just paralyzed, trapped in a moment that didn't make any sense. It lasted about 5 seconds, maybe less, but it stretched. I remember everything in that moment. The slight hum of my desk lamp, the way the shadow of my own arm didn't match the light, the feeling, the awful feeling that whatever it was, it wasn't curious or lost. It was deliberate. As suddenly as it started, I could move again. The breath came back in a rush, sharp and painful, and I did the first thing my instincts screamed at me. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't grab my phone. I didn't even close the notebook still lying open on the desk. I ran straight into the hallway and into the bathroom and slammed the door shut behind me. Lock, click, and then the sound I wasn't ready for. Footsteps, light but real, moving through my room. A few slow steps. Then, the softest sound of my bedroom door gently clicking shut. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in that cold-tiled bathroom, heart in my throat, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. I stayed there for over an hour. I must have stared at the space beneath the bathroom door the entire time, half expecting a shadow to appear on the other side. Eventually, I talked myself down enough to convince myself it had to have been a trick of the light, a dream while awake, a figment of an exhausted brain. That's what we do, right? We explain things away. It's easier to believe you're broken than to accept that something unnatural touched your life. But here's what still gets me. The footsteps, the bedroom door closing. I didn't imagine that. I heard it. I felt it in my chest, in the way the house settled after. And when I finally got the courage to check my room, with every light blazing and my phone flashlight in my shaking hand, everything was in place. Except one thing. My journal had been closed. Now, I know I didn't do that. I left in such a panic I barely remember standing. But when I came back, the pen was lying across the top of the closed cover, like someone had tidied up, like something had decided the entry was over. I still have that journal. I've never opened to that page since. After that night, I couldn't write in my room for weeks. I'd sit at the kitchen table instead with all the lights on. I told myself over and over it was just stress, sleep deprivation, a hallucination, whatever. But I knew it wasn't. My body knew. Something happened that night. I didn't talk to my parents about it until years later. And even then, I said it half like a joke. But my mom's face went pale, and she told me that when I was a toddler, I used to talk about the man in the corner. I didn't remember that. She said she and Dad chalked it up to imagination. Kids see things, right? Except I think I saw it again that night. Only this time I was old enough to know it wasn't just in my head. They didn't believe in ghosts until I disappeared in the middle of the night. So, I was actually the reason my parents are believers now. And honestly, it still gives me chills when they tell the story. I don't remember it. I was just a baby when it happened. But they remember everything. It's one of those stories they've told at family gatherings, but never with any humor. There's no laughing it off. No, haha. Remember when that crazy thing happened? It's different. Their voices get low, serious. My mom still gets this nervous habit of wringing her hands when she tells it. My dad? He just stares off a little too long, as if he's right back there, searching that room in panic. This happened when I was just about 1 year old. Back then, we lived in a small, older house, nothing fancy but cozy. My crib was in their room at first, but that night, I was sleeping in the bed with them, nestled between my mom and dad. That's where it all begins. It was a regular night. They'd both gone to bed like usual, me snoozing soundly between them. No arguments, no weird sounds, no signs that the night would be anything but normal. But when they woke up, probably around 2 or 3 in the morning, I wasn't there. Not beside them. Not at the foot of the bed. Gone. My mom says the panic set in instantly. That gut-dropping kind of panic where your whole body goes cold. She checked the floor first, thinking maybe I had rolled off. Nothing. My dad tore off the sheets, checked the blankets, patted down the mattress. Still nothing. They searched the room like maniacs. Closets, behind the curtains, under the crib, behind the bedroom door. My mom started screaming my name, thinking maybe I had somehow managed to crawl out of the room. But at 1 year old, I wasn't walking yet. I could barely stand without wobbling. My dad, determined to check every possible spot, got down on the floor with a flashlight and looked under the bed. And there I was, lying completely still, right in the center underneath the bed. Not on the edge, not tucked near a side, but smack in the middle, perfectly lined up with where I had been sleeping on top. My mom dropped to the floor next to my dad and looked under with him. She said I wasn't crying, wasn't scared. I was just lying there, eyes open, calm, like I was waiting. Here's the thing, and it's what freaks them out the most. The clearance under that bed was only about 10 inches. Not enough space for them to have rolled me there accidentally. Not enough room for a 1-year-old to crawl into on their own either. The bed had a wooden frame that ran tightly along all 4 sides. No gaps. No way in from above or the sides without literally lifting the mattress or frame. They still don't know how I got there. They pulled me out and I was totally fine. No bumps, no scratches, no crying. My mom held me so tight that I apparently got annoyed and tried to squirm away. But she didn't care. She just kept saying, "How? How did she get there?" They didn't sleep again that night. The rest of the night was spent checking doors, windows, even looking outside. But everything was locked. The alarm hadn't gone off. There was no sign of entry, no sign that anyone had been in or out. That was the night everything changed for them. Up until then, they weren't the type to believe in anything spooky. They were practical people. Ghost stories were for movies or Halloween, not real life. But this was different. And it wasn't the first strange thing that had happened in that house, just the most intense. They started connecting the dots afterward, like how a few nights before, I had woken up screaming, not crying like a baby usually does, but this blood-curdling scream. My mom rushed in and found me standing in the crib, pointing at the corner of the room. She said I wasn't looking at her, I was just pointing and shaking. Then there was the old baby monitor, the kind with the static and crackling. One night, they swear they heard a second voice whispering through it. Not me, not either of them. Just this low, humming whisper that went silent the moment they entered the room. And then the cold spots, always around my crib. They'd walk in and feel it, like a window had been left open, except none ever had. After the under-the-bed incident, they started talking to each other more seriously about it. My dad even called his mother, my grandmother, and told her what had happened. She was the first to say it. That child is being watched. Creepy, right? But she didn't say it like it was evil or harmful, more like observed, like something was keeping an eye on me. Eventually, they had someone bless the house. A friend of a friend who was deeply religious came over and did a quiet, respectful blessing in each room. My mom still keeps a tiny vial of holy water in her jewelry box, just in case. They moved out of that house a few years later. Nothing quite like that ever happened again, not to me, not to them. But they still talk about it, still whisper to each other about that night. And me, I may not remember it firsthand, but I've heard it enough times to feel like I lived it. I can't explain it. I don't try to. But whenever I find myself home alone and catch a shadow moving where it shouldn't be, or feel a cold breath on my neck with no draft in sight, I think about it. How I disappeared without a sound. How I ended up somewhere no one could explain. And how, from that night on, my parents never doubted the unseen again. Sometimes, it's the smallest, quietest things that shake you the most. A couple of years ago, I was still living with my parents. Nothing unusual about that. I had just finished college and was biding my time, saving money, figuring out my next step. Our house was your average quiet suburban place. The kind where the weirdest thing to happen was usually a misplaced sock or someone forgetting to take the trash out. But that day was different. That day still sticks with me like something unfinished, like a puzzle with a piece that doesn't fit no matter how hard you press. I was in my room upstairs, just lounging around. The TV was on. Probably something dumb and light, the kind of background noise you throw on while scrolling your phone. I was also on a call with my buddy Nate. Just the usual talk. Sports, shows, life. Totally mundane. At one point, I decided to head downstairs for a cigarette. The only other person in the house was my dad, and I'd later find out he was napping in his room on the main floor, dead to the world. I let Nate know I'd still be on the phone, took it with me, and stepped outside for maybe 7 minutes, tops. Nothing strange, just a normal step away from my room. When I came back upstairs, I opened my bedroom door mid-conversation, laughing at something Nate had just said. I walked in, phone still pressed to my ear, and sat down on the edge of my bed. And that's when everything shifted. I looked up toward the TV, just casually like I always did, and that's when I saw it. At the foot of my bed, near the edge of the mattress, was a single sheet of paper sticking up perfectly vertical, like it had been placed there for me to see. I stared at it and my brain just couldn't process it. You ever see something so out of place, so impossible, that your mind literally stalls? That's what this was. I went completely silent. I remember Nate's voice on the other end of the phone. Yo? Hello? What is it? And all I could get out was his name. Just a whisper. Nate. He kept pressing, but I told him I'd call him back and hung up immediately. That's when the dread set in. The kind that creeps up your spine, grabs the back of your neck, and makes your skin feel a size too small. I picked up my phone again, but this time I took a photo of the paper before touching it, because I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't imagining this. It was an old economics paper, one I had written 3 years prior in college. I knew the paper. I remembered writing it. It was about government polarization and the way the two-party system divides the country. Kind of intense stuff for a freshman, but I'd been passionate back then. What messed with my head even more was that the paper had originally been 2 pages long, and now only the first page was there. The second was missing. But that wasn't even the weirdest part. The edges of the paper were burnt. Not singed, burnt. As if it had been touched by flame but never consumed. The burn marks were jagged, unnatural. Like whatever scorched it wasn't fire from a lighter or candle. And in the center of the page, right in the body of the text, was a large, glowing yellow triangle. At first, I thought someone had highlighted it, but it wasn't highlighter. It almost seemed luminescent, as if it was glowing faintly in the dim room. That's when the fear really settled in. I hadn't touched that paper in years. It was in a folder buried deep in my closet, along with a bunch of other old assignments and notes. I hadn't even thought about it in forever. There was no way I had taken it out. No one else had been upstairs. No one else even knew where I kept my old schoolwork. And even if they did, how would they have gotten it? Burnt the edges, marked it, and placed it standing perfectly at the foot of my bed in 7 minutes without making a single sound? It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a mix-up. It was something else entirely. And that yellow triangle, it haunts me. I don't know why. There was something wrong about it. Something symbolic, maybe. I even tried Googling different meanings of yellow triangles after the fact. Hazard signs, esoteric symbols, even occult references, but nothing ever stuck as a solid answer. It felt deliberate, but I couldn't tell by who or why. I still have the photo on my phone. I still keep the actual paper, too. I folded it carefully and tucked it away in a folder in the back of my desk drawer. I don't look at it often, but knowing it's there, that it happened, that's enough to keep me up some nights. I've told Nate the story 100 times. He still doesn't know what to make of it, though he admits he's never heard my voice like that. Not panicked, not scared, just frozen. Even now, years later, nothing else like that has happened in the house. But I feel different about the space now. Like there's something just beneath the surface of the ordinary. Something watching or waiting or I don't even know. All I do know is that paper shouldn't have been there. And yet, somehow, it was. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you see, it's what you feel. When I was younger, I lived in a small, quiet house nestled at the edge of a neighborhood no one ever talked about. You know the kind, the one where the streetlights flicker just a little too long before going out, and every shadow seems to stretch further than it should. The house itself wasn't exactly old, but it felt old. Like the kind of place that remembered things. At night, the house would turn into something else. The walls would creak even when no one moved. The air always felt heavy past 10 p.m. But that was my normal. I grew up in it. I learned how to walk in that hallway, how to count using the old tiles in the kitchen floor. It was home, even if something about it didn't always feel right. I had this habit back then. I was a night waker, always waking up around midnight like clockwork. Every single night. I never set alarms or had a reason, I just did. It was like some unseen switch flipped in my brain, and I'd be wide awake, craving something to snack on. Most nights, I'd tiptoe my way into the kitchen, rub the sleep from my eyes, and grab a slice of bread or a cookie or whatever I could get my hands on. My mom had brought home fresh bread earlier that day. It was the good kind, the soft, fluffy stuff in the plastic wrap that crinkled just enough to make you feel like you were sneaking something. I remember lying in bed, stomach grumbling just enough to push me out from under the covers. The kitchen was completely dark as usual. No nightlight, no hallway bulb, just whatever silver glow the moon could pour in through the small frosted windows over the sink. Those windows were always fogged from the outside, no matter the weather. My mom said it was condensation. I always thought it was something else. I shuffled in half asleep, yawning, feet cold on the tile floor. The fridge let off its usual hum, and the faint outline of the countertops gave me my bearings. I didn't turn on the light. I never did. It always felt wrong, like I was waking something else up along with the electricity. The bread was on the counter near the fridge, just past the darkest part of the kitchen. And I mean dark. That little corner by the fridge, the part where the tile met the wall at a sharp angle, it was always just a shade darker than the rest. Like light had decided not to go there. Even in the daytime, it seemed to pull the shadows toward it. Still, I was used to that corner. I didn't like it, but I knew it. So I reached out, unwrapped the bread, and went to grab the top slice. And then it happened. Something hit me, right in the face. It wasn't a slap. It wasn't a fall. It was fingers, long, cold, and bony. Not skin-to-skin warm, but dead cold. Like they'd been buried in the snow for hours and only just crawled back out. They slapped across my cheek and forehead, and for a moment, I thought maybe it was a dangling plastic bag or something falling. But when I reached up to brush whatever it was away, all I could feel were fingers, long, too long, unnaturally jointed. They didn't move like normal hands. They almost lingered, dragging slightly over my skin before disappearing. I don't even remember deciding to run. My body just moved. I turned and sprinted so fast I nearly slipped. As I ran, I felt it behind me. Not saw, not heard. Felt like something was breathing just over my shoulder. And with every step I took, it was right there with me. Behind me, I heard things crashing. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Drawers opening, plates falling, something scraping against the floor. The sound of a low, guttural breath, like someone exhaling through clenched teeth. I barreled into my room and slammed the door, flipping the lock with shaking hands. My chest heaved. The silence that followed was almost worse than the noise. Then, I felt it, a warm, wet sensation near my eye. I touched my face and brought my hand back to find blood on my fingertips. A sharp sting bloomed under my eyebrow. I ran to the mirror. A long, thin scratch, fresh, still bleeding, like something had clawed at me instead of brushing past. To this day, the scar's still there, faint just above my left eye. If you catch the light at the right angle, you'll see it. My friends always thought I got it climbing a fence or something dumb. I let them believe that. I never told my parents the full story, just that I tripped and scratched myself. But I never went back into that kitchen at night again. I started keeping snacks in my room, and even then, I'd go hungry before I opened that door after dark. Years later, when I finally moved out, I remember walking through the empty kitchen one last time. It was daylight. The sun was bright and soft. Nothing felt wrong. But as I stood by the fridge, I swear, just for a moment, I saw the corner darken, just a little. Just enough to remind me. I don't know what that thing was. I don't know if it meant to hurt me or if it was just trying to say something. All I know is it was real, and it was there, and it still might be. This next story starts with a simple knock and ends with something that couldn't be explained. It was just a normal evening a couple of years ago. The kind of quiet, forgettable day where nothing particularly strange happens, until it does. I was at home watching a movie with a friend. It was early evening, maybe an hour before sunset, and the light outside had that soft, golden calm. We were a few scenes into the movie when I got up to use the bathroom. As I stepped back into the living room, just a few feet from the front door, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Not gentle, but not aggressive either. Like someone who wanted to be heard, but wasn't trying to scare anyone. A no-nonsense kind of knock. I was already up, only 3 steps from the door, so I casually opened it. There was no one there, just the front yard bathed in soft light, the sky fading into evening. No cars on the street, no footsteps in the gravel, just peace. I leaned out, looked around a bit, expecting to see someone walking away, maybe a delivery guy getting back into a van, or even a kid pulling a prank. But there was nothing, not a sound, no movement. I shrugged it off and went back inside. 15 minutes passed. We were getting back into the rhythm of the movie when it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. Same weight, same rhythm, just as clear as before. This time, I was already sitting close to the door. Annoyed now, I jumped up and opened it quickly, hoping to catch whoever was playing games. Again, no one. The porch was empty, street still quiet. I live on a corner lot, so it's pretty exposed. There aren't many places to hide, and the layout makes it hard to sneak around without being seen or heard. Still, I did a quick loop around the house just to be sure. Nothing. No shadows darting behind bushes. No figures slipping around fences. It was like the knock had come from nowhere. Now I was unsettled. I didn't immediately jump to the supernatural. I'm not that kind of person. I figured maybe it was a prank, some neighborhood kid messing around, but it didn't feel like that. Something about it was just off. I went back inside, more irritated than scared, but I had this nagging feeling in my gut, like the calm of the evening had cracked slightly, and something was leaking in through the seams. So I grabbed a chair from the dining room and set it beside the front door. Just sat there, hand on the doorknob, eyes flicking toward the window every few minutes. I was ready. I told my friend, half-jokingly, if it happens again, I'm gonna catch whoever it is. We waited. The movie played on, but I barely watched it. Every creak in the house felt louder. The air in the room felt denser, like something was building. Then it came again. Bam, bam, bam. This time it wasn't a knock. It was a full-on pounding. Violent, sudden. It hit the door so hard, the wood shuddered. My friend jumped in their seat. My heart felt like it dropped into my stomach. I didn't hesitate. I threw the door open immediately, expecting, wanting to see someone standing there. But there was no one. Not a shadow. Not a whisper of footsteps running away. No prankster hiding in the bushes. No delivery package. Not even a breeze to move the leaves. Just a wide, empty yard and the fading light of day slipping into twilight. And the silence, that kind of deep, unnatural silence that seems to press into your ears. The kind that makes you realize something is watching, even if you can't see it. I stepped out again, did a slower lap around the house. Nothing. The streets were still empty. Not a single person walking their dog or taking a jog. It was like the world had paused. I checked the door for marks. I had expected maybe some dirt or fingerprints from the impact, but there was nothing. No scuff marks, no dents, just the same silent wood. I stood there for a long time, longer than I probably should have. Not because I expected to catch anything, at that point I knew I wouldn't, but because I needed to feel like I was doing something. Eventually, I went back inside, sat back down in the chair by the door, hand on the knob again. But there were no more knocks, no more sounds. That was it. The knocking never came back. We finished the movie in an awkward silence. I don't even remember what it was. We weren't paying attention by then. The whole room felt different, like it had been touched by something we didn't understand. Neither of us spoke about it after. What was there to say? I lived in that house until just 2 months ago. In all the time after that night, nothing out of the ordinary ever happened again. No footsteps, no whispers, no more knocks. But I still think about it. I don't know what it was. I'm not claiming it was a ghost or something from another world, but I know it wasn't just a prank. I know what I heard. I know how fast I opened that door. I know the silence that followed and how unnatural it felt. Sometimes I think it wasn't trying to scare me, just reminding me it was there. You've made it through the hour. The stories are over now, and the night is quiet again. Let the silence soothe you. Whatever followed you from the tales, leave it here. You're safe, you're calm, and you're already drifting deeper into rest. If you enjoyed these stories, consider subscribing to Dark Reddit for more nightly chills. Until next time, sleep well.